Hello everyone, in this video I will just work on this track. So here you got a little bit of a first impression how the track gets started and what it drops into. And I feel like, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. There is a long chord and then the chord progression starts with that chord and then goes on to other chords, which is always kind of a nice thing to do in my opinion. But next up, I will have to add an instrument because I'm a bit bothered about one of the aspects of this sound. This track, which fades in here. These chords that are played a little bit more rhythmically, I don't like how they come in. It's too boring. It is just a high pass automation. And it's not that I don't like the simplicity of it, but it could be more interesting, right? So I copy the chords and add something new. Now the plugin that you see here is a new plugin that I've been given in NFR license form, and it is called Resynthesizer. It is made by Samplab and I featured a plugin by them before, and I just see it actually has a demo that can be used in the browser. Interesting. Weirdly, I can't find the other plugin anymore. But anyway, Resynthesizer lets you import two samples and then they are kind of like combined with each other. Let's take this mandolin and this rather dull and dark mallet. Now we have two very nice sounds and together it sounds like this. And we can indeed appreciate a texture that is sort of in between already, which is pretty cool. I don't know which synthesis technique is being used here, by the way. You know, I really like to think about these things myself because my plugin Hammer und Meißel is essentially the same idea, but with a different synthesis technique and as sort of an effect instead of a synthesizer. But I think it's pretty similar to what it tries to solve for musicians. Yeah, that's how it sounds. It is not a modal filter. It is too sharp for that. Modal filters would have already resonated the shit out of everything, and also there are no resonance and feedback controls anywhere, so it must be something different. Maybe it's just spectrally decomposed or something. Here we can already see the main control, a crossfader. And you can activate an LFO, in which case the crossfader becomes a range control. And you can see in combination with an arpeggiator that already gives you a lot of different textures. Now the second big thing to consider for this plugin is that it sort of decomposes the samples into harmonic and percussion. So you can decide to only hear the percussion or only the harmonics. And then I can find out that I like the percussive tone of this side more than of this side. Now here's something very special about the UX of the detune knob. Oftentimes in synthesizers you have unique parameters for different kinds of detune. You have octave, you have semitone, and you have fine tune. And here in Serum you also have coarse pitch, and the difference between this and just modulating octave is that it can produce smooth transitions to the target pitch, while these three are snapped. And then there is also often an additional master tune parameter for everything all together, but I consider that more of a tuning system thing. They all influence the same thing though, which is the frequency of the oscillator. And the only reason why we have so many different parameters parameters for that is because we sometimes want to have finer control over everything. Like we want to say, okay, this should be a power chord plus 7 semitones, but then it should also be a little bit detuned for the unison vibes. So these are two different musical reasons, and that's why they have two different parameters, right? But they solved that differently. They made a single knob, and when you only dial it in or out a little bit, you stay in the sense range, because there you can just make the unison stuff. But once you go over a semitone, it will go in semitone steps and then even reach 2 octaves in each direction with a single knob. So that's pretty cool because you have to use one knob less. However, it still has problems in my opinion. Like say you want to have a power chord thing, just as I just demonstrated. In this case plus 19, and now you can't add detune anymore because for that you would have to go back again. But yeah, apart from that, it's a pretty cool feature. It's just, I think unison lovers will be a little bit frustrated. Also, it doesn't really sound like unison even if you try, because it's not playing back these two samples together but actually morphing them. Maybe it makes a difference to have one of them play an octave or a power chord thingy. That's pretty cool, but I think it would be even better if there was a way to make the transition more snappy in pitch. So at the moment we have a sine wave and we could just use a square wave. I think that's pretty cool. What would make this even cooler was if I could choose something in between sine and square. Like a sine wave and then a saturator on that modulator. In my plugin Hammer und Meißel, which you have probably seen already, I hope so at least, there are 7 filters and you cannot turn some of them off. They are always active, however you can make them silent like this. And this plugin has a similar logic, which is that the signal is always resynthesized with a maximum of 12 harmonics, and you can reduce the amount of them to make the sound more basic, more close to a sine wave. Very nice. Now what does dissonance dial in? That is like the coolest knob of all time. I can't stop comparing it to Hammer und Meißel, but that is basically the opposite of my harmony knob. The harmony knob dials in how much the modal filters should be retuned to be part of the harmonic series, and if you have a crazy modal filter that just consists of wild ratios, then the harmony knob will make it sound more plausible again the more you dial it in. But here it's the other way around. You dial in dissonance to get more character into the sound while starting with a perfectly harmonic one. Very nice. I gotta say, I'm not a big fan of the filtering system here. It would be really fun to really shape a specific EQ curve into these transients. Okay, the speed of the sample. Since it's sort of resampled in some way, you can just change the speed without getting time stretching artifacts, which is cool. Actually similar to an idea that I had lately, and that way you can make nice plugs. What I'm missing here is sort of a macro knob, so that I can make a nice transition for my music where the speed gets reduced and you get more of a tone over time. That's why I add macro knobs to all of my plugins, because, you know, in situations like this, the only alternative to a macro knob would be to actually automate parameters. But what is this? This plugin has no parameter list. There is no reason for such cool parameters not to be automatable. actually implemented detune by not modulating to the completely different sample. Well, that was pretty cool, even though I didn't have parameters. Maybe I should also use the rest of the chords while I'm at it. Sweet. Sidechain compression. I know what I just said, that I wanted to get past the high pass automations, but I just felt like I could reference the other automation by just adding a new one that goes into the opposite direction in time, but a little bit later. So the other one is here, but this one has a different function. This one is more like, yeah, this is the ARP of the intro, but a little bit before it drops, it makes space for the stuff that this part is actually about. And then it will fade out in a way that you will barely notice. Actually, I don't let it fade out completely. It is a useful sound. The star of the show of this part are the mystic bells, which are made by having an instance of synth 1 run into Hammer und Meißel. Because that is exactly what the plugin is made for. Getting stuff to sound mystical, and then a bunch of other effects. But the sound never changes over the course of time. At least not yet. So let's copy it, and this time do it differently. I use TugImgSynth because I never used it in a video before, and it's a very nice plugin. I actually don't know if I have already downloaded the latest version, so sorry if it's not the latest version. I was a little bit involved in the testing process. The thing about this developer is he always makes plugins where you can use images in a cool way. So if you're like me and collect cool looking images sometimes, then this is the right moment for them to shine. This is a wavetable synthesizer. And as you can see, the images are being interpreted as wavetables. I personally like the other mode more, where there is a circle on the screen. You can use right-click drags to move the circle around, left-click drags to zoom the circle, and mouse wheel to zoom the image. So now I want to use the envelope on the shift on the image. So I go to the modulation matrix of envelopes and look for shift. And now I can decide the envelope's influence on this parameter. now as you can hear, I have created a texture that is possible with other wavetable synthesizers as well, but not with the same workflow. And I feel like you can really feel the multi-dimensionality of this modulation because it comes from an image, and images tend to have pixels nearby that make sense. And when you use a circle to map that to a wavetable, then that is just a very natural way to interpret the image, more natural than most other image interpreters in plugins. The only thing that is really missing in this plugin is a way to further enhance the sound. After the initial oscillation process has been finished, you can only dial in a bunch of filters. And I mean, that's cool. It's just, I need a little bit more, usually. By the way, this was one of my suggestions to the plugin, to add a way to add stereo separation to this interpreting process, which is, as you can see up here, and it will add an offset to the shift. And as you can see, that creates a very unique and pleasant stereo experience. So that's also one of the strengths of this plugin. However, as I just mentioned, I don't like that the post filter section is so small. So I will also throw Hammer und Meißel on it. In MIDI mode, it will immediately pick up the notes that are on this track, and you know, just slap the same notes on the output of those notes immediately after. You have probably noticed that a lot of times when people review my plugin, they have a really hard time to get something out of it that is not harsh. But as you can see, the plugin was just made to be fed with pleasant textures. And it's best when those textures have a lot of noise in them, so that all of the individual bandpass filters that constitute the modal filter can pick up on something. And then it is really powerful to use these knobs below when the modal material is really complex. And now we have a second mystical arp line that we can combine with the other one. Alright, enough of that. See you